Welcome everyone to CW Live. I'm Natasha Nicholson, Executive Editor of IBC's magazine, Communication World. And today I'll be talking with Kevin Popovic, the founder of the creative communication agency Idea House. And he's also a lecturer at the San Diego State University. And in 2014 and 2015, he was named one of the top 20 digital marketing strategists by Online Marketing Institute. He'll be leading an upcoming IABC online workshop on building powerful brands, and that's happening November 12th to December 10th. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with this first very basic question. Get off the basics. What are the elements of a strong brand, and how does it differentiate a company?
Well, I find that branding is kind of like the word art, right? You know, you ask 10 people, you're going to get 6 different answers type of thing. So as far as definitions, right, let's agree that, the branding is the marketing practice of creating a name, a symbol or design that identifies and differentiates a product from other products, right? So a lot of people will go right to, oh, so you mean a logo, right? So a branding is different than a logo, right? Now, the foundation of your brand is a logo, right? You have that icon, you have the name, you have a tagline, right? This whole little thing that we want to package and we put on everything, right? You put it on your website, you put it on your social, you put it on products, you put it on the vans from your service, whatever, right? Everything gets branded, as we say, with this look and feel. But you have your website, your packaging and promotional materials. Everything should integrate your logo. It should communicate what your brand stands for, right? If it's something of strength, there's usually like a shield or something very strong looking, right? If it is something oriented to women, or perhaps something that is more delicate or fragile, right? We use different typefaces, we use different colors. There's a different feel that we bring to this visual representation, but they're all things that reinforce the things we think, and we want the customer to think about our brand when they associate us with a category. So where you advertise is also part of your brand, right? So the magazines you choose, the mediums that you choose, all of this helps deliver your brand messages, and it's all part of your brand strategy, right? How am I going to get these people to think this about me so that they do this thing that I want them to do? And a lot of this stuff is very literal. A lot of this stuff is more figurative. But all of it, we're trying to really create perception, and then we will manage it over time. So the 3 big parts I think that we got in the brand, one is coherence. You have to be able to present your company clearly and comprehensible, right? I got to get it, right? Like, what do you do? What's the product or service that you do? Where are you on the food chain of all these things in this category? And I want to understand the relationship between its parts, right? Sometimes there's corporate, sometimes there's franchises. Sometimes corporate has different locations. Sometimes it's affiliate or a partner relationship. I got to get it. Like, who is everybody that is in your company and under this big umbrella? And what is the relationship from one to another of these pieces? So coherence is a big part for your customers, right? I got to get it. The next is symbolism, right? So if you think of how you communicate your organization's ethos, your attitudes, this will lead to the perceptions of your company and the people that work for you and the customers that you have and your marketplace. And the last is positioning. Really, ultimately, it comes down to differentiating yourself from your competition.
Well, if we're going to break this down a little bit for our audience of business communication professionals, what should they consider when they're developing a new brand, or they're trying to reinvent an existing one?
What awesome agency are you going to bring in to help you with this? No, a lot of this is, I think it's important for a communicator to have a process, right? And whether they're doing it themselves or whether they're working for somebody, or whether it's a new brand, and perhaps especially even if you're reinventing a brand, you got to have a process, right? A program that we've developed called Properties, which will be the basis of the workshop that I'm doing, has got a very, I would say, a common sense process to it. The first thing is planning. I'm a big planner. Plan for. I think it was there was always this quote that I remember. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. I think it was, if I had 4 hours to chop a tree down, I'd spend 3 hours sharpening the axe. You have to get a good plan. You have to understand the scope of development and establishing the goals and the schedules. Because when you get into something with a lot of eye candy into it, I think it's very easy to go into, let's make it look cool. Wouldn't it look awesome if it did this? And we could put in like lasers and dragons and robots, and the mind starts going, and people think, oh, this will be fun. But what I think the big mistake is leading with those visuals. I think there's a lot of work to do way before you get to that. And it's all around developing a good plan. So planning is the first thing. The second thing is research. Auditing the company as is, not trying to get, not trying to clean up the room because your mom's coming over. Let's really look at what it is and look at its current communications, the identity, the applications for that identity, the behavior of the company with its branding. Let's look at the competition and honestly look at the competition. I think it's for anybody who's doing the branding. I think it becomes discouraging when it's everybody's bad except us and we're awesome and all we have to do is this. If you're looking at a rebrand, there's usually a reason that you're looking at a rebrand, because things aren't going very good. So I think you have to be objective coming into this, and the more objective that you can be, the greater service you will be to this branding effort. I think you also have to look at things like focus groups, internal and external. And I think sometimes when people hear focus groups, they think, wow, that's a giant investment. That would be nice to have, but we know everything that we need to know internally. I think that's another giant mistake. I think I'm always surprised at how much businesses learn when they ask somebody outside of the day-to-day, what do you think, right? Tell us, where do we fit in the food chain? Who are we compared to, whatnot? And undoubtedly, there are giant surprises that we see clients getting when they do those focus groups. So yes, internal is great, and ask the people who know most. One of the things that that I see a lot of marketers do is to exclude sales from exercises like this. And who knows the perception of the customer better than sales, right? They deal with them every day. So when you look at internal, I think you have to learn at all the stakeholders. And I think you should look at something that's very much more cross-discipline. Let's look at product development. Let's look at support. Let's look at sales. Look at the C-suite. And when you look at all those different perspectives, you usually get varying degrees of what we all think about our company. And then when you go outside, you get some affirmation on, what's really going on. The third part will be development, right? Taking a look at what's your development process going to be? When there's you're looking at the brands, sometimes there's what are we going to call the company? And then what do we call the divisions? And what do you call the products? And is there some sort of structure to all of this? All right. And figuring out what symbols, concepts, logos, typefaces, colors, what do those types of things mean? And what impact will they have within the organization? A lot of times we'll see someone, hey, we'll do a new logo and we'll change the color. Right, and then someone in ops gets a giant bill that says, oh, well, listen, it's going to cost you $3 million to paint everything red because now red's your new color. Well, that's a consideration that you need to flesh out in those early stages. You just can't go into, all we have to do is this, right? I think if any of the professionals that are in meetings, when somebody tries to minimize the work associated with this, all you have to do is this, I think that is a giant red flag that you better take a better look at what you think everybody's getting into. And then you have other parts like introduction and implementation, because once you do come up with that brand, how are you going to introduce it internally? How are you going to introduce it externally? And what is the implementation plan? I'll give you a for instance, right? So American Airlines and US Air merged, right? It got announced, 18 months ago. There was a plan. People said eventually something will happen, right? Well, there's something happened recently. There was the last flight out of US Air, and the last of the planes were painted to reflect American's updated branding that they did a couple years ago. So there was an implementation plan over 18 months from the time the business decision was made to implementation. So now we're just seeing the end of that implementation, and there's still things. They did topical things, like the exterior of the plane. But I was on a flight a couple nights ago, and as much as the outside said American, inside it still had one of the old icons from US Air up on the bulkhead. I obviously took notice. I'm like, I guess they didn't get everything done yet. And last is then, and not least, is management and maintenance. You have all this new assets, right? So post-introduction, issues are best addressed, through some sort of documentation, like a new branding and guidelines. A map. Some organizations are going to have compliance How are you going to manage this over time? And I think a good documentation process and a support program can make this all go a lot smoother. So the very long answer to your short question is planning, research, development, introduction and implementation, management, maintenance, all of which we'll cover in the upcoming workshop.
Well, building on what you said, how do a company's mission and goals influence its brand? And another, for instance, if you will, what are some examples of companies that are communicating their mission really well through their brand?
So I think that the brand reflects a lot of those mission statements, that is very awe-inspiring, aha moments that somebody said, oh, this will be our mission statement, and it'll sound awesome. So it's sounding awesome is great, but people are very, it's called skeptical of corporate America. I have no idea why. Yeah, I know exactly why, right? Because they lie to us, right? It's like, oh, we're a brand and we care, but you caught us doing things that we wish you didn't catch us doing. Like you look at the automakers, right? The number of the recalls, and I don't want to misremember the latest brand, but somebody who had all the problems with the airbags, that they knew that they were putting defective airbags in cars, and there's some giant recall after some big litigation. And how does that impact the brand, right? I'll recall years not too far back, right? But Toyota had issues with safety issues. Now they built their whole brand about making a better car and safety was first and whatnot. And then, and they were found to be negligent in safety issues. And there's a number of other car makers that have gotten into the same position. So when you purport that your brand is something, right, that safety is a pillar of our tenet. That the customer service, we put number one, et cetera, and then you fall short on that, your brand takes a hit. Customers are paying attention, and I think businesses would do well to pay attention to those others that we can learn very good lessons about. And it's more important than ever because there are choices in the marketplace, and if you do not take care of your customers and fulfill your brand promise, somebody else will.
Well, let's explore that a little bit more. So what effect exactly do customers have on the brand, and how do you involve them in co-creating your brand in a way that's constructive and focused?
So the impact customers have on a brand depends on you, all right, the brand, right? You define the brand, or you're going to let your customers define the brand in that marketplace, and you may not like the way that they define you. I'll give you, for instance, we worked with the good people at Jitterbug, a cell phone company years back, who had built a reputation for making a quality product, right? Very engineered with the customer in mind, a very design thinking approach, and they built a great product for that market that they had at the time, which was seniors, right? So Jitterbug, as you may call, had a wonderful reputation as a solid choice for the senior market, right? Better hearing, easy to read, great support on the back thing, right? The challenge was that their brand became very successful in being known for the phone for a senior market. But then once you start reaching saturation in that market, it's very difficult to change your brand perception, and they had a challenge in doing that, right? So much so that they pulled an audible, and the brand evolved. That Jitterbug became a product line, and Great Call became the brand. They needed to separate that. They needed a new opportunity to introduce themselves and tell the marketplace, who they are, what they were doing, and who they're able to help. But that's the thing, is you paint yourself in the corner sometimes, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a corner, right? What are you going to do? And that was a very wise audible that the leadership over at Jitterbug had called. It's David In's company, and now they're doing great. Jitterbug continues to leverage the equity that they earned over time as a specific product line, as the branding for the product line. But Great Call has been able to expand into other devices, into other target markets very successfully, and that's another good lesson that people can learn from. Check out Jitterbug and Great Call.
Well, here's another question that comes up frequently from our audience, and there's so many different channels. How do you choose the best channel to communicate your brand?
Yeah, you don't. Your customers choose the channel, right? We see this all the time. I had a great conversation with a guy named Jim Ayub at eTech. And Jim and I were at Call Center Week, and we were talking about what's new in Call Center Week. And Jim and I got into a great discussion about the sometimes arrogant attitude of a customer that they think they get to choose the way they want to they talk to the customers. Now, yeah, historically companies have chosen that says, oh yeah, we're gonna use television as a medium. We're gonna use the internet as a medium. Some companies went all in on social media, but it's really the customer that chooses how they want to interact with you, and in particular the channels by which they want to communicate to you. So Jim and I were talking about, for instance, Twitter. Some people say, oh, well, we're not on Twitter. But you know what? Your customers are. So, and if your customers are sending tweets to an ill-attended Twitter channel, well, that reflects poorly of your brand. That just says you don't know me as a customer. And if you did, you know that I like to communicate in this fashion, and you're choosing not to communicate with me. So I think when we look at the channels to communicate through brand, I think you have to look at what your customers are accustomed to. What are they wanting? It's a service world. No matter the business that you're in, customers have options, and if they want to dial a phone number, then you have to make sure that they have a phone number, and then you have to pick up the phone on the other side. If they want to use social, you have to be there on social. If they want to use email, you have to be tending to the email, right? If they want to use chat, then you have to be there up on chat. So I think when we're looking at the channels of communication, I think you have to look at the spectrum of communications, if you will. You have to look at branding and marketing and advertising and design and public relations and internet and social media and multimedia and sales and events, and I think I got them all. I always miss one. But these are the things that you have to look at. It's just not like it used to be. And that's one thing I want to stress to all of the demographics of the professionals that are tuning in, if you will, right? It's just not like it used to be. It's not TV, radio, outdoor, and print, and then the internet, right? It's multi-channel, and if you don't have a mix of communications, then you're missing an opportunity somewhere.
Well, Kevin, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, and I want to thank you so much for joining us.
And I thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to working more with, of course, with IABC, and seeing a lot of the good members at the workshop.
Well, and to our viewers, you can learn more about Kevin's brand building workshop on iabc.com. And thanks for watching.
Thank you.